Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Multifamily Hangout live. I'm your host, Adrian Danila. I do want to thank our sponsors from Apartment Snapshot and GPS Roof Leak Repair for being a great partner and making this broadcast possible. Chris Moreno, take it away, sir.
Thank you, Adrian. I'm actually, we're all three of us are traveling on the road out in the Baltimore and DC area, making things happen on Capitol Hill. And I'm really excited because we have a great guest today with a great following. Looks like we've got a lot of people jumping into the room here. We're going to ask a lot of great questions. But she has a wealth of experience, not just in operating multifamily, but also on the culture side and the leadership side. And she doesn't just do her work. She goes and brings other people into the industry, mentors them, supports them. So I'm really excited to hear some secrets and some knowledge and get her perspective. So without further ado, I want to welcome you, Melissa Joy from Village Green to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I've been so excited about this opportunity, sitting down with two people I watched from afar and excited to share a little bit about my story.
What I'd really love to hear is your story. How did you get into multifamily? And how did you get into the role and position you've gotten to today?
Well, I will tell you, it is one of my favorite things in life to reflect and talk about my journey in this industry because it's really become my life story. And I don't want to be defined by my career, but my career has really defined my life. First and foremost, I want to say that I can't believe I'm saying this out loud. I have been in this industry in April will be 30 years. I literally started as a part-time Saturday girl leasing consultant as a 17-year-old. It's interesting. Back in January, I had the honor of being installed as the president of the Greater Cincinnati Northern Kentucky Apartment Association, which feels like the pinnacle of my career. But what is so amazing about that is, as part of my installation into the presidency, I had the opportunity to give a speech. And as I reflected, and I knew, I've been on the executive committee for several years, so I knew my presidency was coming up. And as I started thinking literally a year ago, what in the world am I going to say when it's my turn to be installed? What am I going to say about my career and about my journey? So I had this opportunity to spend about a year, it felt like, thinking about how can I take 30 years of life and condense it into a 15-minute speech and talk about what I love so much about this industry and tell my story. But I spent a lot of time, I narrowed it down, and it's really given me this perspective again this year because I'm about to celebrate. And I know the date that I started in the industry, April 24th, 1994. I was a junior in high school. And how it came about is my aunt growing up, my mom's second to youngest sister, she was the cool aunt, the one I always wanted to hang out with. I'd spend the night at her house all the time, babysat her kids. She worked as an assistant manager at an apartment community in our hometown. And I had, over spring break of my junior year, this assignment that you were supposed to go to work with a parent, write an essay about it. Well, my mother worked for, our family has a small real estate brokerage in our hometown, and I'd gone to work with her, felt like every day of my life. My dad was a blue collar worker, so that wasn't an option. So I called my favorite aunt and I said, hey, how would you feel about me coming to work with you a day over spring break? I ended up going in Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. At the end of the week, as luck would have it, their regional manager called and said, and this was 1994, mind you, hey, we're going to start opening the office on Saturdays, and we want you to go ahead and make your schedule for the rest of the year to, have office hours on Saturday. Well, my aunt was a new mom. The manager was an older woman who was just like, absolutely not. I mean, I thought they were going to flip their desks over at the thought of being asked to work on Saturdays. And I'm looking around and I'm like, I could work on Saturdays. I'm doing all this stuff anyway. They had me filing and I delivered newsletters. I coded electric bills. I copied invoices. I did a little bit of everything that week. And lo and behold, I got hired. I think I was making like $7.25 an hour. And I thought I had the best gig ever. And how it worked out is that I worked there the rest of that year, all through my senior year. They ended up having me come in some extra times and literally the month that I was graduating high school, my aunt got promoted to be the manager and they asked me if I wanted to be the assistant manager. And I had plans to go to college and I was very excited about that. But what it did was allow me to move out to my own apartment at the property. There was a community branch of Miami University right next door to this property in Ohio, in Middletown, Ohio. And I was able to take the assistant manager job, get a raise, get a discount on an apartment, still go to school. And ever since that time, I have had the opportunity to elevate in my career. I was always very willing to do whatever it took. So I started out as the part-time Saturday girl, became the assistant manager. Ultimately, I became the manager of that property. Then I became the manager of another property, April of 2000. And that's when my journey with Village Green began. So in April of 2000, I went to another property in Cincinnati. I only ever worked at 2 properties on site. I'm kind of a lifer. And so I have this fierce loyalty to what I do and the people with whom I work. I went there and I had this tragic situation in my family that happened. I was in my early 20s, and it really caused me to evaluate, like, what am I doing in life? Am I making a difference? And for the first time ever, I put together a resume and I thought, I'm going to just see what else is out there. I was getting an accounting degree, and I just thought I might want something different. Well, right about that time, as I'm the manager at this other property, this gentleman calls, and he was distraught, and he was looking for an apartment for his parents, who were in their 50s. They were moving from St. Louis, and he was looking for an apartment for them. His father had terminal brain cancer, and he and his brother lived in Ohio. His parents needed to move there so they could help with the father and be with them for his, final months of life. And through that experience, I befriended this woman. Her name is Elaine. It's such an important part of my story because through this experience and helping them find an apartment, they made the, cross-country move. Her husband, Dick, ended up passing away within a few months from brain cancer. I realized how important it is to do what we do in this industry, which is at the root of everything. If we peel back all the layers of what we do, we help people in their lives. And what I have found over the years is that when people move, it's either the absolute best time of their life, they're getting a new job, a new relationship, a new city, something exciting, or it's the worst time of their life. They've left a relationship, someone has to downsize, they can't afford their home, or job has changed. It made me realize how impactful what we do is. And it's so funny, when I gave my speech for the apartment association, I talked about how I still communicate with Elaine. We are friends. We've been friends all these years. She came to my home when I had my son. We've stayed in contact. I visit her at least a couple of times a year, and it really just grounds me and reminds me that while, the apartment industry has blown up and its real estate is the best investment anyone can make, and multifamily is something to be proud of in and of itself, the fact that we help people in the most important times of their life is really what keeps me motivated, and it keeps me feeling like I have a very important impact in the world. I could talk for days about my story, but I think that's the highlight reel.
Alyssa, amazing journey, amazing accomplishments. I'd like for you to share with us and with the audience, what are the best lessons that you learned along the way through your journey?
On a personal level, one of the things that I have learned is to talk less and listen more, because everyone in this journey, and I feel so fortunate to have started truly grassroots. I mean, I started at absolute bottom and have done every single thing that is to be done on site. I learned the importance of hearing other people and of paying attention to what matters to other people. In our industry especially, there are apartments on every corner of every street in every city across this country. People have a choice where they can go and where they live. It's super important that everyone feels heard, and not just the people who choose to live at your communities, but the people who choose to hire you. If you're a third-party operator, Village Green is exclusively third-party management. So for us, it's super important to hear from our clients. What is your business plan? What is your strategy? Are you buying this property for short-term or long-term hold? How can we help you as your partner accomplish your investment strategy? So hearing from people instead of telling people, especially at this point in my life and career. It's funny, I was at a dinner last night, and I don't even know the last time this happened. I was the youngest person at the table by 1 year. And at my age, I feel like I'm constantly the oldest person in the room, and I'm the motherly figure. And I remember taking applications as a part-time leasing consultant thinking, I'm the youngest person in any situation, and now I'm the oldest person, it feels like, in any situation. But especially at this point, people want to hear from me, what's your experience, and what do you know, and what have you learned, and what do you think about, all of these things. I have to constantly remind myself that it's way more important to listen. There is a time and a place and a season for my experience and my leadership to prevail, but nothing that I have learned in life is more important than listening. And as a mother, that is the most important job that I have. And the most important title that I have also learned, my son is 12, especially the last couple of years, stop talking. I have taught him a lot. I have, given him upbringing, and he still needs upbringing, of course, and guidance and leadership, but I want to hear from him how he's feeling, how he's thinking, see how he responds. So being as much of a coach as possible instead of, the overly helicopter type parent. Personally, the listening more than talking is important. And then professionally, one thing as I have really zoomed out and, prepared again, I feel like this opportunity to serve as president of the Greater Cincinnati and Northern Kentucky Apartment Association gave me this beautiful gift of taking time and zooming out and evaluating all my life experiences. I have learned that, first of all, it's a very, very, very small world. It's a very small industry, and it's getting smaller by the minute thanks to opportunities like this to connect with people virtually and to connect online. You never know who, when, where, why, and how you're going to run into people again, but you are going to. There are people who used to work for our company who now work for owners that hire our company. And so we are working with people in a new capacity. There are residents who live at one property, and if you're in the business of third-party management, you could be managing any property on any street in any city, and you'll meet these people again. Clients. We've had clients who work for one ownership group as an asset manager, and then a year or two later, they work for another group. So it's so important to make sure that you are constantly aware of how you are treating people, how you're representing your company and yourself, and that you show up with integrity and you show up with a spirit of serving every single day, because it's a small, small world.
These stories are phenomenal. I think, as you mentioned about listening and learning from others, we both, I'm actually wearing my Leadership Lyceum badge here. And if we think about the different types of program, from Leadership Lyceum to NAAEI to other programs that you probably have also done locally, how do you think about these different programs and how maybe they've impacted your leadership style, how important you think they are to other leaders and people getting into management? Is it important for them to try different programs? And how do you think about time and spending time to learn?
First of all, I think it is invaluable. And if anyone is under the false impression that learning is a destination, that's something that I recognize. I am a lover of learning. If I could be a lady who lunches and just learn nonstop, I would seek every degree. I love formal education and higher education. And so I think there is a risk of thinking that you've experienced all there is to experience. And I joke about our industry all the time. Just when you think you've seen it all, something new comes up. Like, I don't understand how there is not reality TV based on the multifamily industry. Like, you just can't make some of the stuff up that we see and experience. Every variable that you could conceive exists in our industry. We have technology, there is accounting, there's human resources, there's financial and investment strategy, math, like all of those things. But what is equally critical, and what I think from my vantage point that I've learned the most through the programs, especially Lyceum, which I did a couple of years ago, is the value of connecting with people, learning from people, and then just the psychology of people and life. Because what we do is so unique in that we live with our clients. I mean, when I think about the intimacy that exists between us and residents, for example, just that client base, it's interesting. We in multifamily, if you do what I do in operations, your clients are the people that work with and for your company. Your clients are your owners, whoever hired you to manage their properties, your service providers, and your residents. You've got all these different kinds of people that you're serving. And one of the things that I learned very early on is that it is critical to understand people. I feel like if you are interested in getting into this industry, having some minor in psychology is very, very important. Understanding people and how important it is when people are going through, again, what's either the best time of their life moving or the worst time of their life moving, like, how do you serve them? And if you think today about mental health, for example, I was in the operations committee meeting this morning for NAA, and we were talking about the mental health subcommittee. The mental health crisis that exists for our resident base, for our associate base, it is critical. And so even if you have a wealth of knowledge as it relates to your field of expertise in multifamily, sales, operations, facilities, service providing, whatever that is, study people and study how people interact. And then if you zoom out even further, with NAA, and what I loved so much about Lyceum is there's a point in time where you have something to give back, right? Even if you're brand new in the industry, or if you've been in the industry for 30 years, anything in between, you have something to give back and something to inspire in other people. There is no shortage of need for mentorship. Of course, there's the need to teach skill, and there's a need to recruit and kind of proliferate the exciting things that are going on in our industry. Like, you are the most important part of what is happening in our industry. Our mission at Village Green is to create authentic experiences that lead to stories that people want to share. What I love so much about that is that everything in multifamily kind of falls under two headings. No matter what you do in this business, you are either renting apartments or taking care of people. And so when I think about how important it is to learning about people and how and why people, tick, what it means to make them buy from you, rent from you, choose to get their products from you, choose to work for you, choose to renew their lease with you. It's all about how you are showing up for them and how you make them feel. Are they valued? Of course, are they getting a good deal? Like, at this point in time as consumers, like, there's enough information out there and enough tools and resources and technology. Like, there's only so much you can do when it comes to the pricing element, but there's no shortage of things you can do to touch people on a different level. Long way to say that I think there is just a dramatic need to increase all of our knowledge base about relationship building and connecting as people.
Before going to the next question for Melissa, I just wanted to say hi to everybody in the audience. I want to ask you to drop a line in the comments, tell us where you're watching from today, and to thank you for taking time out of your day to be here to hang out with us. How, in your opinion, what are the most important qualities or skills that make a successful manager in general? We have managers of, many levels, entry level, mid level, high level managers, but what are some qualities and skills that will make a great manager?
The skills that it takes to be successful as a manager in this industry, which is demanding of you in many different regards, starts with the innate desire to do a good job. No matter what you're doing, you have to have the skill to want to do a good job. There is no question you have to be competent. And when it comes to being a manager, the definition of managing, is really about other people. It's about inspiring other people to do all the things that need done and keeping all of the balls in the air and making sure that people are showing up for you. I think in this industry, especially because we are taking care of the homes that people live in, when you think about how much we know about the residents that live with us, we know their credit score, we know what's going on in their personal life, we know their housekeeping habits. When I was a property manager, I was like, I know more about the residents who live at this property than anyone else I know in my life, other than the people that live in my own home. Like, there's no real way to describe the intimacy that exists in our industry because we live with our biggest client base. I think managers have to really have, again, the competency to do the job. If you're a service manager, you got to have the skill to do the job, of course. If you're a property manager, you have to, know financials and things like that, but you really just have to have the personal skill that you do whatever it takes, the desire to do whatever it takes. I don't know about anyone else, but in this industry, I think job descriptions are really great chalk lines, but it would take every sheet of paper known to man to write down all of the possibilities that could come up on any given day at any given property in the world, really, because we're managing the lives of people. So I think this real emphasis on understanding people and also empathy. There was an article floating around a couple of years ago, and I've seen all of my friends reposted on LinkedIn about how empathy is the most important skill that anyone can have right now. And I fully believe that. If you don't understand and have the ability to process why people are showing up or not showing up for you the way you need them to, life is going to be really hard no matter what you're doing. I think we've got to have that skill set, managing leadership way more than you have to have the skill of learning how to, repair something or complete a report. Those things can be taught.
There's a time for giving advice, and there's a time for just being an ear.
Yep.
And a lot of times people don't need advice, and many times the advice doesn't actually align And I found much of the advice is bad. I love what you're talking about empathy and actually hearing, are you really listening to what that person's saying and what they really oftentimes are looking for. So advice from one person to another. So that's huge. I love what you said as well. And I'd love to dig in a little bit more, your leadership and your hard work and the people around you that you work with. As you talked about with Greater Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky Apartment Association, what are some specific, maybe some initiatives you might be able to share, whether it's with them or with NAA or maybe with other partners? Are there some initiatives you're working on that you can share with us, maybe around getting more people involved or bringing people up to kind of pass the baton, as you mentioned about being the youngest person at the table, number one. And of course, you don't need to go into that. I know there's probably a secrecy thing about the reality TV show. So we won't go there, but if you can share any kind of nuggets and maybe how people could get involved, and maybe I think there's people in the audience who want to know how they should get involved. How could they help you?
First of all, I want to acknowledge it's very difficult for me to stop talking. I love talking. I love connecting. I love sharing stories. One of my closest friends in life said, Melissa, I want to tell you something, and it might not sound like a compliment, but it is. She said, you are the most prolific oversharer that I have ever known, and I love that about you. And I was like, whoo, thank you. I don't know how not to just, share, but it's very difficult for me to not share because I get very excited and passionate. Especially when it comes to people and their story. Like, I just love the human condition. First, I'll talk about as it relates to Village Green. Being the leader, I'm a senior vice president for the company. I oversee a region of about 11,000 apartment units today in Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, and the Carolinas. In my career, I have covered Indiana, St. Louis, Missouri, and Kansas City, Missouri. I've had properties coast to coast, Vancouver, Washington, Portland, Oregon, Atlanta, just all kinds of different markets. And so I have always had this very interesting geographic area that I've covered, which means I haven't had the one-on-one time, the quality and depth of relationship with people that you get in person. Like, growing up being a property manager, working on site, you see those people every day and you get to have those water cooler conversations and things that connect you. And I picked up on it very quickly when I became a regional manager. And I was literally, again, at one point in time, my portfolio as a regional manager included a property in Portland, Oregon, Vancouver, Washington, St. Louis, Missouri, Dayton, Ohio, and Atlanta, Georgia. And I was coast to coast. So I just didn't have the quality of time. And what I learned is that when I was there and when I was in person, it was so critical to build the relationship and to build the trust with people. Getting to know them was so important. So I really intentionally invested in getting to know people, and not just what's your favorite, lunch or what's your favorite drink and what do you like on your pizza, but like share your greatest memory from grade school. What's the best field trip you ever went on? Or if you could have lunch with one person, who would it be? And what's the last book that you read that really inspired you? Like those kinds of questions that make you connect with people. At Village Green, what we did 5 or 6, maybe 7 years ago now, is we implemented something called a daily go meeting, and go stood for grand opening. And so the concept of this meeting is that we would get together as a team. And so the supervisor, whatever team you're supervising, property manager would get the site team together. I would get my regionals together. And we would just have a 10 or 15 minute touch point. And sometimes we would talk about housekeeping items, like here's what's going on today, here's who's moving in, here's the, focus of the day. And then other times we would have leadership topics. We would share articles. I shared that article about empathy from Forbes that was circulating on LinkedIn. I share quotes and stories sometimes. The starfish story was one of the very first go meetings that I ever had, about the man walking down the beach with his son, picking up starfish, and having that lesson with the son that you can make a difference to one of these, even if you can't make a difference to all of them. So those kinds of intentional moments, taking time out of our day to connect with people, that was one initiative. And then with the Greater Cincinnati Northern Kentucky Apartment Association, which I will henceforth refer to as the GCNKAA, number one, it's taken me a lifetime to be able to say that acronym without stuttering, but it's just faster to say it. So about, 6-7 years ago now, I was invited to co-chair our social media committee, and it was like fresh off the press, brand new committee. I joined forces with another woman from the industry, and we were really just trying to get followers on our social platforms, starting with Facebook and Instagram. And one of the things that I brought to the table at the committee meeting was I'm on the board of directors at that point in time. I was relatively new to the board. And I said, I'm looking around this table and there are people here who I have sat by in meetings for years. There are people that are working for companies in Cincinnati where I have grown up my whole life that I know by name. I say hello to. We, small talk it up at the trade show and all the things. I know nothing about them, like nothing. And they're a human being just like me. They put their hands on one leg at a time. We share, even people that I shared the same title with, just working for a different company. I'm like, I know nothing about them. What if we used our social platform to get to know our members? So we started this initiative called the Weekly Member Spotlight. And every Friday, and I did it for years, I had to pass the torch with my presidency here and my commitment with that. But every Friday, we would have a different weekly member spotlight. And so there was a questionnaire. People got to fill it out. They could be as intimate in the sharing of their details or as, keeping it close to the vest. But we asked them personal questions. Tell us about your family. Do you have any pets? What's your favorite book? Do you follow sports? If so, who's your team? What's your favorite local restaurant? What's the best vacation you've ever been on? And we did this for years. If you go to the GCNKAA LinkedIn site, YouTube channel, Facebook page, you will see years worth of these weekly member spotlights. It has been, for me, in the last 5 years specifically, one of the most incredible experiences ever. Number one, I got to know people that I have known, like superficially, at a level that I would have never expected. And the benefit of this, I almost feel guilty for the benefit that this is, what it has done for me as a human being, the perspective that it's created, the richness that it has given my life. I've been an avid reader my whole life, but one of the questions on this questionnaire was, what's one of the best books you've ever read? I have a list that I will not make it through in my lifetime, from books that people have recommended, both personal, like just feel good books, and professional books, podcasts, like all kinds of things that other people who I know and respect from my local market. I've interviewed people nationally from the NAA, and just invited people who are involved in the industry to come to this. It's making an intent to invest in getting to know people and connecting with people. And it literally took less than an hour a week of time to do this. And I'm like, if I don't have an hour a week to connect with people who inspire me and who improve the richness of my life, I probably should reevaluate my priorities. But it was taking that intention and having the platform to do so. I would venture to say that all of your local affiliates have some social media committee and that they would welcome anyone to participate. And I can tell you that our local Cincinnati Apartment Association still needs people who would be interviewed for this initiative, and I would be more than willing to get you connected and get you scheduled for something like that.
Before going to the next question for Melissa, I want to encourage all of you in the audience to drop some questions for her. We got to monitor the comment boxes and we want to ask questions on your behalf. This is one of the reasons why we do live, because we want to have you become part of this conversation. Please drop your questions in. We promise that we're going to get to them. A leasing agent, entry-level person needs to know like 50 or 60 to be proficient in 50 or 60 different pieces of software. And this is a nightmare and is really unrealistic. To get an entry level, you pay someone entry level and the expectation is that, they got to be proficient in 50 or 60. So it's not sustainable. How we as an industry could do a better job at like PropTech better and then like make it doable for our employees at the site level, especially so we're not giving them a feeling that we're instead helping them, we're punishing them with technology.
That is a great question and something that is absolutely at the forefront of many, many conversations as operators, I can tell you. The advice that I would give to the people who are creating the technology and or promoting the technology is to make sure that you're starting with the right people at the right places. I think you're probably asking about the user of technology more so than anything else. But I will tell you, even in my role, like I'm not the person at Village Green who anyone would want to talk to about technology. We have a director of technology and a vetting department, and the people that put thought into the technology that we use, it's kind of like start there. We have had different people promoting different pieces of a tech stack, kind of start with a client who might not understand how everything has to work together and be supported and be funneled And the reality of life is that as the operator specifically, like it has to fit into our stack and our box first. And so starting in the right place, which is with the operator, is very important. And with the right person at that firm, that's very important. In terms of being the user and the front line of a property, I think I can speak for my company when I say we don't take the decision to introduce new software lightly. When we do roll something out, it is very thoroughly vetted, it is trained, it is supported. There's really no question to us expecting people to know how to use and how to properly fold that maybe additional piece of technology into their daily routine. We are constantly looking for ways to create efficiency, obviously, and be the best partner to our clients. So, like I'm accustomed to working to, we always take it very seriously, and there's no flipping of a switch. It's rolled out. There's a timeline, well planned, etc. I have friends who are in the industry who have experienced the opposite, and it is disruptive. I think the risk in general that we have in our industry, you've, I'm sure, picked up on the fact in the last half hour that I am very much a grassroots kind of person when it comes to my feelings on this industry. At the heart of everything we do, we are taking care of people. And at the heart of everything we do, we're hiring people to take care of the people that we're responsible for taking care of. We are trusting our employees with residents' homes and with our clients' investments. So we have got to truly make whatever we're doing easy for people and make it make sense and give them the tools that they need to be successful. I would just encourage anyone who's evaluating their tech stack, and I know that's happening daily, to do it in a manner that has sequence. When you do anything out of sequence, even bake a cake out of sequence, like it's not going to turn out right.
What are some things you listen to, or maybe things that have helped you with prioritizing your time and management? And do you have any secrets to success you can share with the audience?
Ooh. First of all, I follow Simon Sinek. He's probably my favorite person to follow. One thing that I learned the very, very hard way is that I have to treat myself like a human being. The things that I do to enrich my own knowledge is I'm very intentional with what I study. I absolutely love to learn. I love to read. Like I love to read so much. If you had a conversation with anyone on my team, they'd probably like roll their eyes because every single week, just about, I am sharing something that I have read. It might be like a normal book. I'm reading a book right now called Remarkably Bright Creatures. I just read a book called The Women. Neither one of them have anything to do with business, and I have found the nugget that is a leadership or business principle from these personal books that I've read to share with my team. I do it with sports analogies. I love football, so I'm constantly sharing like the team analogy and the sports analogy. But I invest in myself about behavior. I follow Mel Robbins and Brene Brown on social media, and they have books that I have read that are important for leadership and for self-growth and for self-accountability. I take that very seriously. As much of a leader as I am, and as importantly as I take my role as leader and mentor, I know what that means is that I have to invest in myself. The other thing that I do is I make sure, now I said I'm a prolific oversharer. I share what I do in my personal life, and I share the fact that I'm a human being with everyone because I want everyone to feel comfortable and safe being themselves, because I think that's when you get the best from people, is when they feel safe enough to be themselves. Being a mother is so important to me, and so it does not matter what is going on in life. The weekends are for my child, and they always have been. And we go on the most incredible adventures. On any given weekend, you can see us going, whether it's to the zoo or the aquarium or a fun house like arcade type place, or going to Disney or going on vacation. I live and work as hard as I do so that I can have those weekends with my son. And there was a time before I had my son, because I had him a little later in life, that I thought working 7 days a week was how I was going to get a title and get promoted and have the opportunities. And I very quickly found out that I love what I do, and that's because of who I am. I will never not work my hardest to do a great job and to show up as my highest and best self for the people that I am serving. But I am a human being with a family that means more to me than anything possibly could. And I work so hard to set the example that working hard is something to be proud of, and so that I have the means to do the things that are important to my family. That, to me, investing in myself taking the time to learn and have self-awareness has been critical to my leadership ability and my longevity. I think, what's the means? What's the end of what you're working for? Because if you are not doing anything with your hard work, you're going to give up on discretionary effort first, and then you're just going to give up altogether next.
I want to switch gears a little bit, and I want to go and bring up centralization. There's a lot of conversations about centralization in our industry. So I would like to ask you, is centralization just the buzzword for the moment? Is it a real thing? Is it a combination or somewhere in between the two? What's your take on centralization in multifamily?
Ooh, well, interesting today. I mentioned earlier I attended the NAA Operations Committee meeting, and centralization has been the topic du jour of that meeting for a couple of years now. I don't think it's a fad. I don't think it's a buzzword. I think it is about efficiency and all the things that are going to be required of us. I mean, one of the things that we talked about is how we were talking about today centralization in two areas. First and foremost, with services. A woman in the meeting brought up the fact that she has heard several operators are using centralization for things like accounting services, and that's not a big conversation in our industry right now, but it is a challenge for firms to hire and retain the talent of accounting. It's a highly sought after skill, and they're often entry level positions that they're hiring, and we're competing with lots of other industries because every industry has accounting. That was one level of centralization. And then the other thing about centralization is that with all of the rising costs that owners of apartment buildings are facing today, if you only focused on taxes and insurance, which has been a huge subject, especially at the Advocate Conference this week, where people are meeting with, all of their representatives about what we need to continue being successful in this industry, having the ability to create efficiencies in operation expenses is critical. So I think that there will always be varying degrees of what centralization looks like. Like centralization for a, third party operator who doesn't own the, buildings that they're managing is always going to look different than centralization for a smaller operator who might have the ability to be nimble because of their geographic footprint. Those kinds of variables are going to exist, but there's no doubt it's here to stay, and it's going to be, the National Apartment Association is going to be looked upon to share data. We talked today in this operations committee meeting about some of the subjects that we would like to see data shared when it comes to centralization, and something like collections and accounts receivable came up. And there is someone on the committee who represents a collections firm. And he said, I would love to share some data because centralizing something like collections could really impact in the most favorable of ways an owner's ability to get their money back. And when we as an industry who have gone through things like COVID over the last 4 years, there are still areas of the country that are trying to catch up from evictions that were filed in 2020 and 2021. That is wildly impactful. So centralization from all of these different angles, it's here to stay. And I think it's going to be a very relevant conversation and something that's going to have varying degrees of impact for the different operators and the different owners in this industry.
How are you thinking about labor shortages? Whether it's on-site teams, maintenance teams, especially the maintenance side, and keeping these buildings in tip-top shape.
Very timely to have this conversation. The National Apartment Association has put a very big focus on the RPM careers subject and initiative, which is coming up in April, to spotlight all of the opportunity that exists. I remember when I started in multifamily and I shared my story with you, I didn't even know what apartments were. How would I know what apartments were? My aunt worked at an apartment building. Okay. I probably saw a TV show or two where someone lived in an apartment, but I didn't know what that meant. Today, everyone knows what apartments are. Everyone knows someone who lives in apartments by choice or necessity. Today, it's either or. There are luxury apartment buildings. And so it's this much more enticing industry. There are now professional designations. There are higher education degrees that you can get. I remember when Ball State offered the first property management degree. And so it's become this real specialty. And focusing on just like you allowed me to do here today, sharing my story, I think that is how you encourage and influence a new generation of people. You don't necessarily go to a career fair as a college graduate and see as much about apartments as you do about anything else, right? And so we have at Village Green specifically for years and years have had a manager and training program where we go recruit college graduates. And before there were property management degrees, there was hospitality. And so we were recruiting people who had these, hospitality and business background experiences to come and learn more about the industry and learn more about our company. And it's been very, very successful. Of course, we've got to take advantage of the traditional ways to recruit people, but we've also got to really influence people to consider this industry. I love the social media phenomenon that has been the last 5 years specifically, where our industry has really impacted LinkedIn. It's funny, my significant other is in the pest control industry. And I have gone to some conferences and I have made friends with his group of professional friends and acquaintances. That industry is so wildly different than ours. And when I follow a lot of pest control professionals on LinkedIn, I'm like, what our industry is doing is so special. While we can both, I'm sure, take pages from each other's playbook, like we've got this dynamic group of people in our industry. Personalities that exist in our industry, people who want to take care of people, and people who do whatever it takes to get the job done, especially if you've ever worked at the site level, like it's a different breed of people. So sharing our story and putting it out there is the way we're going to influence the next generation. And then you, of course, have to give them a career path. The CEO of Village Green started as, a leasing consultant and has a story that is not too different than any other person you meet in this industry. So you can truly come to this business knowing nothing about the business and end up running a company and end up influencing thousands of people in your career. That story has to be perpetuated.
I love that you're bringing up storytelling. I think this is such a powerful tool that's grossly underutilized in general in life. But I think our industry needs to do a better job using that tool, because there's just so many amazing stories. First, your CEOs, I know personally so many leaders in the industry, executives that came from nothing, from entry-level positions and made it so big, leading multi-billion dollar companies. It doesn't get a whole lot better than that. What are some trends that you're seeing in 2024 and beyond? What are some challenges that you're seeing our industry facing this year? And what are the opportunities to overcome these challenges for us?
Well, many of the things that come to mind as challenges for this year and beyond are things that we've touched on during this conversation. I think from an operations perspective, the cost of doing business has risen at a rate that the cost of income is not quite raising to. I think over the last several years, rent growth has slowed down, but the cost of hiring people and paying people, wages have increased, and the cost of materials, goods, and services has increased. Taxes, I mean, even personally, the taxes in my county doubled. It's insane. Imagine multiply that times hundreds of units in any multifamily, situation, and it's impactful. I see this trend of expenses having to be managed at a level that, we obviously always, we're running businesses, we're always focused on being as efficient as humanly possible. If there's only, 100 pennies in a dollar, there's only 100 pennies in a dollar. And if it costs more pennies to do the work that needs done, that's impactful. That kind of focus and creativity is important. What I think is so interesting, and if you think about people as being an artist or a scientist, not that you have to be one or the other, like we need both. My brain is more of an artist, like you make something from what you have. And in science, everything is absolute, right? Numbers add up. There's only so much of a dollar, like we said, but we've got to figure out how to marry the science of there's only so much resource that we have and money that we have. What kind of creativity can we bring to the conversation to impact that? And I think to like resident relations, for example, if you have fewer people moving out, then you need fewer people moving in. And if you need fewer people moving in, that's less cost in advertising, less cost in turnover expense and getting apartments ready, and you're spending less. and you're keeping people happy. And those happy people are telling the story of being happy. And so how can we influence people to stay longer? Because that is one that has never changed, regardless of how much it costs to do business. Like, we've always had that power. Like, we've always had the power to click our heels and give people those experiences. Now, you can't change the fact that maybe someone needs bigger or smaller or different geographic location or something like that. But if people are moving across the street or down the road, like, why? What can we do? How creative can we get to keep people here? The other thing, trend-wise, obviously the whole challenge with employment. I've become increasingly aware of my age, which is both painful and beautiful as a woman. I love that I've become wiser and smarter and proven to myself that I can survive, anything thus far. I'm 100% successful of surviving every day so far. What I've seen in this generation that's so different from me, and I feel like, maybe people of my age, is that people are not afraid of making a change. People are using the word disposable doesn't feel good because it's not a great word, but gone are the days where people are staying and working through the hard times. Like, I work harder when times get harder because that's what it takes. And I do what it takes. And I have seen that not everyone feels like that. And sometimes people will literally go take another job for $1 an hour. And I'm like, are you evaluating the culture? Are you evaluating the cost of the experience that you gain and the integrity that you gain from being able to say, I've held this position or I've worked my way up? It's this like instant gratification almost. And because people get desperate, they often hire people who are not qualified to do the job because someone has to. It's like, do you pass the mirror test? And it puts all of us in this position where we don't have people with the same amount of longevity as we used to. And I'm all for growing your career and I'm all for opportunities. But I think if people, especially, at a company like Village Green, we have such an emphasis. Village Green actually won the National Apartment Association Award for education last year for our education program and our investment in development programs internally. And I see people who miss out on the opportunity to grow in their career because they think what's over here, the grass is greener. And do you know how many times people have come back to me and said, when we come back, you've heard the boomerang phrase, it wasn't greener over there. And yeah, I may have gotten a raise or I may have gotten the title that I thought I was ready for, but it's not what I want. So this learning to manage that mentality and just the challenge that exists, it's a much different labor market today than it has ever been in my career. Those are the trends that I think are most impactful to us right now. And the root of everything that I stand for, which is the human connection and the empathy and the, getting on a human level, no matter what it is that you do, remembering that we're renting apartments and taking care of people, is the way to tip the scale in our favor and to get what we need out of relationships.
These stories are awesome insights. I think you talked about the small talk versus the real talk, right? When you get together with people, you meet people at events, we're in the same building right now on different floors, but we'll definitely sync up. I love what you said about your kids and sharing, and I think it's so important. I think a lot about, paternity leave and how there are these things that you think about at one point in your life and you have one viewpoint and then you learn something new. For me, that was a big thing, was like making it a thing and standing up for others. Because if you don't speak out, you don't share about your kids, then other people don't see that and they have to see it from leaders. So thank you for that, number one. Number two, family first and importance of that. So I think the question I want to ask you here is kind of two questions. Feel free to take it how you like. Being at the top, journey to the top, especially in leadership, can feel very lonely at times. And I want to get your take on what keeps you going, number one, and number two, is there an influential person in your life that is a close friend or mentor or someone who's maybe made a major impact to you that you can maybe call out and share a story about that?
First of all, I don't feel like I'm at the top. I have a title that means I have a lot of responsibility, but by no stretch do I feel like I have any more important of a position. As a matter of fact, one of my pet peeves in life is people saying, oh, you're so busy or you're so this. I'm like, you know what? I'm no more or less busy or more or less important than anyone. I just have different kinds of responsibilities. And I've had the fortunate reality that I've had more years in my life to do what I'm doing here. And so I will say it has, for me, the the loneliness or the isolation, and I absolutely have felt it, has come from, number one, I take my position very seriously, and I am a consummate professional. And being the prolific oversharer that I am, I have to keep that very personal, because I absolutely do not cross lines when it comes to professionalism. Being a third party operator, people want me to overshare about other clients or other, even on site resident situation. Like, there's a line, and it's a professional line, and I take it very, very seriously. And I often feel like people want to take advantage and get information that I would never share out of sequence. I take the responsibility that I have to be confidential when I am dealing with professional matters, which is maybe a good offset to the fact that I'm very willing to share what goes on personally with me, because I kind of remember the time of my life where I looked around and I'm like, okay, everyone's human. It's not just me feeling like, am I able to do this? What's going on? And, the human condition is very real. I think that created some isolation, me having to figure out that people often want to talk to someone because they have a title or, work for a very respected company. And I have both of those things. The professionalism that I demonstrate speaks for itself. The other thing is all the traveling, and you both have traveled quite a bit. I don't travel nearly as much today as I did, but there was a point in time where I had to not sleep under the same roof as my son for many nights a week, and it was excruciating, and it was a sacrifice that I was able to make, but I will tell you, it took a toll for sure. And I don't know, Chris, if I could narrow it down to a single person, but I will tell you that the best friends of my life are because of this industry. And to name a couple of names, I will tell you that, first of all, my significant other, I met through that weekly member spotlight initiative that I told you about. He works in the Cincinnati market in the pest control industry. His name's Eric Scherzinger. And we've been dating for 5 years. And what's so interesting is we could not be more different. We have this common thread. We know some people, we know the same people. I've been able to trust in him all of these feelings and experiences, and he knows enough about it, but he's not in it. And he knows the people that are involved in it, but superficially. And it's just made for this really amazing relationship where I kind of have the best of both worlds. And it's also opened my eyes to a whole different industry that is, again, somewhat aligned to what we do. And I've had the opportunity to go speak at the National Pest Association conference, which was great, and share perspective as a property operator. I also have a very good friend, the friend I told you before we got on this. I had to check out and I needed a space to do this. So I'm in one of my very best friend's room, and he is a vice president at a company, a development company in Cincinnati. And I met at the Apartmentalize conference about 5 or 6 years ago. My son was the ring bearer in his wedding a couple of years ago in Vegas in a pool. And over the it's been 6 years now that I met him, we have forged this friendship, and I have been able to share with him the highest and the lowest times of my life, personally and professionally. And I'm sure I could name 30 different names of people that I've met. All of my friends, my best friend, female friend, is a woman that I worked with at the second property I worked at in my life. And we grew up together. We've gone through weddings and divorces and children and job changes and promotions and all the things together. And it's all because of this industry. And so when I said earlier, I don't want my life to be defined by my career, it could not be defined. Because when you work as intimately as you work with people, and we do in this business, and spend as much time with people and have the longevity that I've been fortunate enough to have, how can you not share your life experiences? The girl that I spoke of, her name is Stacy, and when I think back on all of the life-changing events that shaped me as a young woman, she was there for all of them, every single one of them. Relationships, my child, the death in my family, all of those things, and I couldn't replicate that if I tried. It can be lonely sometimes when you need someone in the moment, and you can't overshare on a professional level, but the friends that I've made along the way balance that out without doubt.
Lisa, thank you so much for being with us, for hanging out with us for an entire hour. Even more than that today, we really appreciate your presence here. A lot of wisdom, a lot of insights. I can't wait to replay the whole conversation and to pull the nuggets out of it. That's my favorite part of the entire conversation. Besides the live experience, I do want to ask you final question. And it's one of my favorite questions. We're in this for a short period of time. It might seem like it's a lot, but it's really not a lot at the end of the day. How would you like to be remembered?
I would like to be remembered as someone who deeply cares about people. I have a belief in life that we all have our portion in life, and what's mine is mine, and what's yours is yours. And there is enough for all of us. And if we treat people with the respect that they deserve on their worst days, as much as we do on their best days, we're all going to enjoy the portion that we have set aside for us. So I would like to be remembered as someone who respects the human condition and shows up for the people in my life to the best of my ability every day.
Thank you again, Melissa. I couldn't think of a better way to close this up. Chris Moreno, any final thoughts?
Unreal. Really appreciate you taking the time. These story shares, I think, like you said, the real intimate conversations, giving to others, learning, paying it forward, and it tends to come back in life, and I think the struggle is real. So you sharing the ups and downs, I think about that all the time. And when you live and breathe it, right? Like people ask me why I come to these events year after year after year, even through success. I'm like, we're just getting started. We're just getting started. So I love it, Melissa. Thank you so much for sharing your stories, and definitely recommend people to engage Melissa, learn from her, and get back to the industry.
Thank you so much.
I want to thank our sponsors for making this possible, Apartment Snapshot and GPS Roof Leak Repairs. Thank you to all of you in the audience for hanging out with us again. This show wouldn't exist without you. We hope to see you back here next week. We have another special guest, Jennifer Stachokas. She's an amazing leader. We can't wait to have her here with us next Thursday. Take care. Have an amazing day.